Hi, welcome back. So we're basically just trying to test this, Twitch streaming, and we want to see if it is at all productive. So we're going to be just demoing only today, and I kind of like got all my team members, whoever are just awake, so that they could just come and join in the, live session in the studio. So we want to basically create a page on Twitch and just test it out. I mean, in terms of coaching, therapy, hypnotherapy, timeline therapy, testing it out in terms of basically finding experts in terms of the field of psychology, finding experts from the field of psychotherapy, finding out people who are psychiatrists or trained mental health care professionals. And we wanted to see if this channel could create any traction regarding that area. So what I do for a living is kind of like work around with being as an interventionist. So we're just going to be waiting for some of the team members to join in, where they can just put in chats, and we could have certain question and answers regarding any questions that they may have regarding coaching or therapy, and we may address them. And let's try to see if we could have a few around those areas. But other than that, I mean, I'm really excited to be on Twitch. This is going to be our first, live show, and we might start to continue this if this creates that sense of traction that may be required. One thing that I really find that it's kind of like difficult to be basically live streaming, and then live streaming also for quite some couple of hours. And right now, even it's like 4:20 a.m. in the morning, and we're from Pakistan Standard Time. And you may want to also Google where Pakistan is and what the time zones are. That's Pakistan Karachi Standard Time. And so it's an immense amount of fun. I'm learning about how to go do podcasts and do live streamings on multiple platforms, and we have been doing that in the past. Yet on Twitch, this is just the first experience, and we want to see how the Twitch audience is receptive towards such topics. I mean, would this topic really even work around here? Of course, Twitch is in partnership with Amazon, and again, it's a really big platform. However, as much as I've Googled on the sense for Twitch, it's mostly the gaming and the gaming shows that basically go around there. But yet there are mixed views. I mean, you have like in YouTube, where it's filled with content that people are coming around on Twitch and talking about their areas of expertise, and they really don't have to be from the gaming background to literally make their way and pave their way towards other categories such as coaching, therapy, and interventions. So we're going to be looking around at that. I mean, I think today we could be just sharing about a really quick step, and that could be regarding reframing. And let's talk about a little bit about reframing. So when we're into the coaching intervention, when we have a client, and of course clients come up with challenges, and they have certain things that they're struggling in life with. And one of the areas that they do really want to talk about is, how do I get rid of my negative thinking? And we want to look at some really cool, quick tips that could help us to get rid of that sense of negative thinking and create a sense towards positive thinking. So as you guys may be there, just try to tune into any negative sense of thinking that may be going on for you. So whenever you recall a specific time, where you basically felt something, and, that just brings in a process where you're just starting to negatively think about it. And once we have that, or we could take an example, like let's say if you have your cell phone and your cell phone just fell down and it just broke. Okay, so the front screen got damaged or something, and that was an accidental phase. But every time you think about that, it's like, holy shit, why did I do that? Why did this, cell phone break? Why was this, why couldn't I just save that? I mean, that was a really expensive mobile phone that I really purchased, and it starts the sense of that negative thinking. And then of course feelings kick in and everything else, but we're just seeing only the sense of negative thinking. And some questions that we could really start asking. And of course, now we want to establish also that life is all about asking the right question, and asking also something that is really, really qualitative. And in terms of quality questions, if we ask, why did this happen, it just begets a little bit more negative response. And that's why some of the questions that we want to start is not with a why, but rather if you could change the structure of a question, which could help us to reframe, and we could basically think on different directions around that. So let's talk about those. What could those questions look like? What could those questions feel like, and what those questions could accomplish for us? So here are a few questions that one can ask, and the first question that would be is, what would I choose to do differently next time? So let's try to go work with this question. So what would I choose to do differently next time? Now my cell phone broke and I'm like, holy wow. Okay, fine. So what would I choose to do differently? Well, next time maybe I could just get a cover for it, maybe get an extra protective layer for it, or maybe, maybe not use cell phone on the, roadside. And this opens, you see, a entire domain on basically a possible thinking of, what to think other than just asking, God, why did this happen to me? I mean, even if you ask God, like, why did this happen to me? God is going to look down and say, like, because you deserved it. I mean, there's no possibility of solution when you're asking the why-based question. But when you say, what would I choose to do differently next time? And that opens up a lot of possibility. Not saying that they'll start feeling better instantly, yet it just opens up a possibility for reflecting on, well, what could I choose to do differently next time? And the other thing is that, maybe if this question doesn't inspire some audience, we could ask a different set of question. And that different set of question could be, let's try to talk about this question and let's see what this question does. What can I learn from this? Oh, that's a good question. It's better. It's at least better than God. Why me? And why did this happen? So we could look at, what can I learn from this? What is there to learn? The learning that would allow me to, let go of all that negative thinking. And so what is that sense of, working around that? And I could just, figure out some things. What can I learn? Well, they're pretty much, coming in the ones that I had done before, but learning could be, well, I need a extra cover for it, just like previously. Yeah. So it doesn't really, I mean, both are great questions and both are, picking out some new possibility, but learning could be also, that, okay, fine. Sometimes, life does begate certain problems, and what I can learn is just learn how to basically, be more careful next time. And that's a good possibility that you guys could explore. And let's figure out a few more questions. So these are just about 2. And now I'm just thinking about more questions that could come up. And now let's talk about a belief-based question. So what do I need to believe in order to feel better about myself? And what do I need to do in order to believe that I'm, feeling good about this? Well, I could basically give a belief system to myself. And some people do have belief systems, and some beliefs that you could, gift yourself with is, well, maybe, I got saved from something even much more worse that could happen. I mean, like, maybe the cell phone's just screen is broken. I mean, what if the entire cell phone crashed and maybe I couldn't even get my data out? So thank God, at least, it was just the screen. So that belief system still empowers me to basically think beyond the sense of negative thinking. Sure, I'm upset still about why the screen broke. And we could, discuss about, like, okay, fine, what are other belief systems? Maybe I was saved from some bigger damage. Sometimes some damages happen in our life and they're just there because, they just happen, and life happens for us, right? It doesn't happen to us, and that's how we want to take it. So life happens for us, and as life goes, maybe it was there to teach me something. Maybe, I need to believe that I was, maybe if I didn't have this experience, maybe I would want to, learn something different from it, and it could work in that possibility as well. And let's look at a few more questions. I mean, still much better response. We're just looking at the quality of response that's coming out from the client's end in these questions. I don't know, try these questions out and see how these questions work for you, and how do they, work with the areas of your challenge areas. Now, there's another question we could ask also. What's good about this situation? I mean, oh my goodness. I mean, like, what could be really good if my cell phone broke, and my screen got damaged? I mean, well, sometimes some clients would go like, no, nothing is coming up. I mean, that's a stupid question. And at times, some clients really do respond to that one as well. And one of the responses that, clients would love to, give it out, like, holy wow, maybe this is a great time that now I can upgrade to iPhone 12 Max Pro. I mean, I don't know. So unless your iPhone 12 Max Pro broke and there's nothing else to upgrade to, which will be a really bad scenario. Well, it goes to like, okay, fine. Now I can, if it was iPhone X, I could upgrade now to going up to iPhone 11, 12. And that opens up a possibility, at least brings a smile on the face. Okay, fine, maybe now it's the time to just upgrade. So that's a good question. What's good about it, right? And yeah, so these are some of the, questions. We're just having fun with questions. As a coach, I like to explore certain questions with clients and see how they're working with them and how they're resonating with them. And that's a very, very cool phenomena to work and explore with our clients. And then again, as we subsequently, move forward, how do we, what are more questions that we could ask, So let's look at those other ones. Like, one could be, what else is good about this? What else is good about? Okay, one is that I can upgrade, and the second thing that may be good about it is that now I'm more aware. Yeah, that's a great answer to explore. Like, I am now more aware. I know that shit can happen, right? So I'll be more careful. And, at least the good thing is that I had a realization. You see, sometimes the concept of realization is a biggie, and most clients who go through, certain set of, total sense of negative thinking, only for them to realize that they're doing this is also a blessing in disguise, right? So I think that's also a great way to look at this question. So this question was like, what else could be good about it? And let's look at one more final question. I mean, there's no final list to it. I mean, this list could go endless, but we're just exploring questions. So as we do this, why not just give it one more try? And now let's look at this question and let's see how this question enacts for us. Then the question is, in which context is it okay for this to have happened? Now, in which context? I mean, like, my cell phone broke. Dude, that's not good in any context. I mean, no context would that be really nice. But let's say if he had to construct a positive response around it, what context is it okay for a cell phone to break? Well, it's okay in the context for a cell phone to break. I mean, if the cell phone really was that old and outdated that it really didn't require us to keep on holding on to it, and maybe just brought in a new thought that I can go for a new cell phone. But again, it's vivid, okay? I mean, still, it just brings a smile back. I mean, when you're reflecting on these areas, rather than just thinking, God, why me? That's going to create more pain. And that's the idea with, analogy of, looking at things. There are things that basically cause more pain, and there are things that basically move us towards more optimum, potential direction. So we want to see about which direction we want to go, and we want to have the questions that really create that sense of empowerment for us, which are cause-based, areas where we could take more power, we could be more in control, where we could be more, accurate with our behavior and actions and reactions. So we're not reacting, we're technically we're just acting. And in that sense of an action, we're also remaining very, very positive, calm about things. And still, these questions do have a very high sense of resonance in terms of, like, let's say, here's a perspective to it. I mean, what's going to happen if I start feeling bad about it? I'm going to ask stupid questions. I'm going to get into more wrong analogy. That's going to cause more pain. It's still not anything better for me. Rather, why not just ask, good, funny, good, empowering questions that could at least lead me to a potential guarantee of something very futuristic, or, at least towards positive thinking. So these were some of the questions. And if you put them into an analogy, whatever we have asked so far, what's good about this? Great question. What else could be good about this? Great question. In what context would this, be okay for us? A great, question. What do I need to believe in order to feel good? That's a great question. How could I, choose to do things differently? A great question. And what can I learn from this? And that's, above all, I think, one of the best, questions that we could ask. And of course, there are also other few more questions that we could ask, and they also help us to get rid of the sense of negative thinking associated with the, some event that has happened. And we could look at, how about this one? Let's try to see and test this question. You can ask the client, do they have a role model? And the client may say, well, yeah, I do have a role model. You guys have a role model. Everybody has one or the other role model. And when people have role models, you can ask them, preceding the question, you can just go into the next, phrase of the sentence and say, well, what would have your role model done if this had happened to them? Would they just sit and cry and bitch and mourn about it? Or what would they really want to do? So when you ask, I mean, you're not going to say bitch and mourn. I mean, if you had to ask them, what would your role model do? And they'll think for a moment. It's like, the people that really inspire me, they don't really complain much with life, right? Isn't that true? So my role model might have, said, okay, fine, things happen in life. And this just teaches us to be more careful and considerate. And maybe that could be a response for a client, and that's groundbreaking because they can get rid of the negative, sense of that feeling. I kind of like that one. I think that was really great question. What else can we do? Can we think of any other questions? If you guys have any suggestions into what would be really great reframes, please do drop in a comment and figure out what questions that you can create and construct. The other areas that I love asking a question is, like, for example, the awareness. Like, what was it so I could ask, what was it so important that required me to use my cell phone in the wrong direction or in the wrong position or maybe in the wrong setting or in the wrong context that, led to basically the cell phone falling down and breaking. And this brings out a lot of awareness again. It's again a good awareness based question. What was it that caused the cell phone to break? So it's a what based question still, but still, what caused the cell phone to break? Was it that my hands were slippery? Was it that my hands were too sweaty? Was it that I was rushing on the road? What was it that really caused it? Was I, startled by something else that was, around me and that caused the cell phone to fall down? Or was it like sheer sense of negligence that I wasn't really paying attention? I was just so focused on what I had to type or what I had to do in terms of applications. And this what-based question creates awareness. So at least, even if it doesn't do anything else, the client could go like, yeah, maybe I should have had the right grip, and maybe I shouldn't hold the mobile phone from this angle, and maybe I should have held my cell phone more often in this particular style. And they could, give certain areas. I don't know how also the cell phone broke, so everybody's, sense of how their cell phone breaks is a very different context, okay? So sometimes, somebody could just put it in their back pocket and sit down and then, just sit on their bumps and then, it breaks. So, they could have awareness around that. So what basically, the what question could get the analogy that, okay, fine, I never put it in my back pocket. So still that awareness and that sense of capability of learning for a client could be really, really massive. And now let's see if there is any other question. And of course, once the stream ends, you guys can definitely leave in your comments and your sections, and we could basically explore on what other questions in terms of reframing could be for client. Now, one is for these spiritual people, and in terms of, again, it's a belief-based question, but in spirituality, some people are spiritual, okay? Irrespectively, they have a lot of spiritual myths and concepts around it, and you may have heard that, for example, somebody may say, well, it was because, somebody did black magic on you, or, it could be like, when some person, tells you, well, it's because, you are, buddy, you show off a lot, and see, this is what happens when you show off too much, and this is how, the spirit world or realm gets back to you in that context. And if that's so, then you could ask yourself a question, well, even if it was in spiritual context, so we want to go from the dark energy towards the positive energy. So there's also, if there's a dark sense of spirituality, there's also a positive sense of spirituality. And maybe that positive sense of spirituality, we can ask a question, because we want a question, right? And we could frame it in the question and embed that into the question and say, well, what did the positive side of the energy, want you to learn from this experience? Holy moly. Maybe, I don't know, if somebody is spiritual, then it's like, maybe this experience needed to happen for me to grow, in my sense of basically understanding more about myself and learning that, how problems come up in life and how I could tackle them better. I'm not really sure how the client may respond to this question. And still, we would want to expect something very beautiful and possible or plausible as to what clients, and not accurate, right? So there's a very big difference when we're expecting our clients to do something that is, accurate, and then having our clients to say something that is plausible. So I feel that's still plausible. And it's worth, exploring. So they could say, in the sense of positive spiritual realm of energy, they could say, well, maybe this experience happened because I was drawn towards materialism, and it was there to nurture me and bring me back towards my spiritual connection and disconnect me from the world in that particular moment. Because I kind of realized this, that, because one of the airline services in Pakistan was, Air Blue. It kind of flew, and some of the people that wanted to get on that airplane, they were fighting with the airline staff people. We need to be on this plane. We need to be on this plane. They were pissed off. They were really angry. and just to their realization, they realized that 1 hour later that plane crashed. And then they went, they went into their mosques, they went into their churches, they went into their temples, and they started praying like, thank you God, I was not on that flight, no matter how desperate I was. Maybe it was the way of calling of inner nature or calling of some spiritual realm that saved us from a bigger damage or loss. So I think that's also a great instigated question that one could ask in sense of reframing going forward, and we want to explore. So today we're just exploring on what reframing questions are and what could we do more around this area, and what would that question be like that would excite the neurology of a client and to help them to initiate more possible and plausible thinking levels. Now I'm just taking a concentration, and maybe I'm trying to also consider as the cell phone breaks. Okay, so what else could that we could ask also this: what else could that mean? So when the client says, "Well, my cell phone broke," that's stupid and that's bad. That's really really not on. Well, what else could that mean? And what else could that mean positively? So that's a great question. So what else could that mean positively? Now that forces the client to make a choice in terms of being positive as well and explaining what else that means. So you're kind of like creating a complex equivalence, here. So this is equals to this. And so we're seeing now positive attribution associated to a negative, event that we did encounter. What would be the complex equivalence? Well, my cell phone broke means, I get to buy a new one. I mean, my mind always keeps coming back to that one. But it could also mean that, maybe I was saved from a major, cause of distress. Or it could also mean that, it was high time that I learn about how to discipline myself. So there could be one of those depends on how the client chooses their sense of complex equivalence. But saying the question forces the client to think towards a positive nature and give an answer very positively. And it's also fun having with the client, you're just talking to them and creating their, brain to think more towards a sense of positivity so they can get rid of that negative thinking. So these are some of the couple of the questions, and I would like you guys to revise, review, and recap, and figure out which questions really work for you. I'm sure that not every single one, but maybe on just one question, maybe most of the answers of life do come about, or they do spring about. The other great question that you can ask: well, what did this experience overall get you to reflect on? What was your reflection in terms of overall experience in terms of this, process that happened? And that's also a great way and a great question that you can ask. Like, for example, let's try to talk about this. Yeah. And, oh, by the way, we have one question that's come up, and that's from my team member. So it's Bismillah Osman, and she says, is there a way to look into that situation? Yeah, that's a great question. And we could also have the client to ask, can you look at this situation differently? Is there any way to look at this situation positively yet differently? And that explores a lot of other options, and that's also true. We could get the clients to look at the situation a little bit differently. We could have the clients to have a focus at something else, or we could have them to focus on things that they were not aware of. What did this incident get them to be more aware of positively? And that's a very great sense of framing, how we would want to basically go into the sense of reframing for our clients. So pretty much there, I think these are some of the massive, set of questions that we could ask our clients to think about them. And here's also one more set of reframe question. I mean, we could also ask about, so there's some clients who basically keep on talking about the bad incidences that happened or something that is triggering them negatively, and we could ask them, when would be a great time to stop that from becoming a limitation for you? And that's a very closed group question still, but just kind of like hijacks that space and says, well, okay, yeah, I mean, there has to be a time that I got to stop thinking about this. And they may say maybe right now, maybe tomorrow, maybe day after tomorrow, but still it just installs an option or a possibility for a client to reflect on. So I think these are some of the bunch of all the reframe questions that we do talk about, and we can always be more reflective of how we would like to carry these things on. Now, I want you to take this as an assignment. So your assignment could be, think of a specific time when something negative was presented to you, either by life or by, situation or by some loved one. And something just happened. I mean, it was just a negative situation. And just take out all these questions and see how they would basically work around and figure out how they could basically map up to creating a better response. Yeah. And here's one more from, again, a team member. So I'll just put this one. This is I missed this question. Is there any friend of yours who may have gone through a similar problem, and how would their problem inspire you? So we talked in terms of a role model, and this seems a very different set of super questions. So we could basically ask this one: is there any friend of yours who may have gone through a similar problem? And this helps the client to basically know and be aware of that. Do other people? Maybe let's talk about this. It creates gratitude, right? So I mean, it's not like you're not the only person in this planet Earth that's going through problems. I mean, there are other people who are also going through this sense of problem. And we're going to talk about the gratitude-based question in a moment. But this also helps in terms of helping you to find out, what your friends would do. And maybe if they don't know, they could go and ask their friends, hey buddy, if you had been in this situation, what have you done? And friends become good counselors, and big sense of support that they're there in that moment. And that's a great way also to get rid of negative thinking. Let's talk about the gratitude one. I mean, you're complaining about, so you talk to the client, and it's just a bit of a discussion. I'm sure this was a really big loss that you broke your cell phone and that happened. Yeah, but what if, look at all those people that are underprivileged, maybe those who cannot even really afford a cell phone, or maybe let's not talk about cell phone. Maybe they have some, biological, advantage, or, they basically maybe, disabled, and they may be differently enabled. What about those people? I mean, talk about the people who can't even use cell phones, right? Because of their sense of, functioning that is very limited. So at least aren't you better than them? I mean, again, and if you had to think in sense of gratitude, what learnings come up to you? Yeah, in the sense of gratitude, what learnings come up to you? That inspires the client to think in a lot of multiple directions, and that could be there. And here's one more, again, from my team member. My team member is kicking in, so I think she's the only one there, and she's jumping in with all these questions. But I love them. I think this is really good. This helps me to start the discussion. So what is that one question you would want to ask yourself? Wow. I mean, yeah, this is my goodness. I mean, I wouldn't even really be able to come up with this question myself. So this is great. So what is that one question you would want to ask yourself in the situation? And that's basically a question over a question, and maybe what we would want to structure this sentence is that we would want to let our clients know, well, sure, I do understand that, there's one question that you would want to ask yourself, but what would be that one positive framed question that you would want to ask yourself that results into a positive answer? Can you think about that? And that's going to give a client much more creative edge to think about, oh my God, I mean, does this, problem, so okay, fine, I have this problem, which I need to develop a question on, which also has to be positive, which also has a reproduced, positive response. And when they do this on their own, they're actually training their neurons, and they're practicing their brain muscles to go from negative thinking to positive thinking. When you're into sense of negative thinking, you're firing neurons and they're connecting negatively. But yet when you get to the other side of the equation, when you're towards triggering those neurons to work positively, that means you're connecting more neural networks that are going to lead you to this positive sense of energy that's going to be flowing onto you. So these are really great sense of the reframe sets and questions. With that, where our time is going to be very limited, so we just have about 30 seconds. But I'll catch you guys again on Twitch, and let's see if the stream really works well for us. Meanwhile, signing off and adios. So take care until we meet again. Have fun.